Hi, I want to talk now about justice, particularly about distributive justice. But before I begin with that, I want to talk about justice in general. What is it? Velasquez describes justice as a kind of fairness. When you're working with a group of people, when you're eating dinner with your family, you want to make sure that the benefits and burdens are distributed fairly. In other words, some people set the table, some people do the cooking, some people do the cleaning up afterwards. It should be done fairly. One person should not be given all the burdens unless other people are taking on additional burdens outside the dinner time. For example, if someone's working 15 hours a day, you probably wouldn't expect them to do much in terms of making dinner. But, another example would be just dividing up pizza. When you're with some friends and you buy a pizza, you want to make sure that if everyone chips in equally, everyone gets equal shares, or at least equitable shares, shares that are fair, depending on who's hungry and who's not, perhaps. So fairness is one way of looking at justice. Now, when we speak about justice, we think about justice in terms of basically three distinct categories: retributive justice, compensatory justice, and distributive justice. Retributive justice, the word retributive comes from retribution, which means punishment. So if someone commits a crime or does something which is ethically or morally wrong, we think they should be made to pay for this crime or this immoral act. So retribution is the act of punishment. A criminal is put in jail. If someone commits a moral crime, maybe they may not have broken the law, but say congressmen who act immorally may be fined or actually in certain cases kicked out of Congress. Now, compensatory justice is the justice we talk about when we're trying to compensate victims of crimes. So someone who's been the victim of a theft, when the criminal is found, they are made to repay the person from whom they stole. So paying back the price of the object which is lost is a way of compensating them. Compensatory justice. Sometimes compensatory justice requires that the person pay back far more than they stole because of the pain and anguish and suffering caused by what they did. So sometimes the actual value of something stolen may be $10,000, but they may be forced to pay back $30,000 or $40,000 to compensate the victim. Sometimes when the damages are big enough, this certainly is also a form of punishment as well. But when we talk about business ethics, the most important kind of justice that we want to talk about usually is distributive justice, because we're talking about distributing society's benefits and burdens. When we talk about benefits, what comes to mind are things like jobs, housing, education, so forth. Burdens would be, really difficult, grueling jobs, which are a form of hardship. Sickness, living in areas which are devoid of human services and so forth. These are the burdens that accompany certain lifestyles or places where we live. So when we talk about justice, we're talking about distributing these benefits and burdens in a way which is fair. This is distributive justice. Now, according to Velasquez, all forms of distributive justice have at their core the same theoretical or formal foundation or principle or maxim, if you will. And what is this principle, which is the foundational, formal principle of distributive justice? Let me read it to you. Velasquez says that the formal principle of distributive justice may be expressed as follows. Individuals who are similar in all respects relevant to the kind of treatment in question should be given similar benefits and burdens, even if these individuals are dissimilar in other irrelevant respects. And individuals who are dissimilar in a relevant respect ought to be treated dissimilarly in proportion to their dissimilarity. What that means is you treat equals equally and treat unequals unequally. Now, in our society, we think equality is a very important thing. That's true. Equality of opportunity is very, very important for us as Americans and as human beings. We think that all people ought to be able to have the opportunity to achieve the same kinds of jobs and success as other people. But obviously, if you're talking, it's equality of opportunity, but if you're talking about actually giving a job to someone and you're hiring someone, you want someone who can do the job. If you're hiring someone to be a physicist to work on a NASA space program, then they better know math and science, they better know physics. Otherwise, they won't do a very good job. So you're looking for people who are dissimilar, who are unequal in this relevant area. They're unequal in the sense that they are better prepared in this one area. So when you're hiring people who hire give a job description so that they can actually tell people what are the relevant areas which you need to be really good at. If you're not really good in math and science, then you shouldn't apply for a job at NASA if you're as a scientist. Now, what is important in this formal description is that people should not be treated unequally if their dissimilarity is in an irrelevant area, such as their religion, their race, their sex, for example. So, for example, if two people apply for the job, one is black, one is white, one is Asian, then the dissimilarities that we want to look at are what are their qualifications, which one is better prepared for the job, not, which one is, of a different race. So, for example, racism, like say a white racist who doesn't like to hire black people, is looking at the wrong qualifications. He's not treating people equally in the sense of judging on their merits. He's treating them unequally based upon things which are irrelevant. So, what's important, let me give you an example, a very mundane example, so that we can understand this benefits and burdens thing a little bit better. Suppose you're going to a school function, and there's a big auditorium to set up, and you come, and there's a bunch of people. Maybe it's a church supper, in fact. Let's say that, because you have a broad range of people. Little kids, teenagers, adults, elderly grandmothers, all setting up for this church supper in this big, room. And there are chairs and tables which are stacked against the wall. What is fair in terms of the distribution of the burdens of setting up? Obviously, you don't expect a 90-year-old grandmother, if she's frail and rather weak, to be carrying around heavy tables and chairs. You would leave that to the strong teenagers. Say the football team shows up, let them lift the heavy burdens. Let the grandmothers set the table or do things which they are able to do. Okay? Let the little kids, also place the napkins by, the plates. In other words, you want to do things in a way which is fair. And sometimes this requires looking at the different abilities of people. So, what's important here is to realize that the formal principle is that you should treat people who are equally when they are equal in the most important respects, or the relevant respects. But all the other things, their skin color, their hair, their religion, their sex, these things in most cases are irrelevant and should be not considered. Now, that's the formal principle. There are material principles which we need to talk about, okay? So I'm going to do that in my next section, so I'm going to quit for now and come back and talk more about distributive justice.